Over the last few weeks, we've been doing a lot of introspection and we've been kind of going on a journey for ourselves to get more clarity on what we do and, more importantly, why we do it. And so we've been on this exercise, and we started with what we believe about people, that every person has value, that people are valuable, but they're also vulnerable, and that people need leaders. And then we moved on to what we believe about leadership. It's a responsibility, um, not a reward. And we've talked about that leadership is influence, and influence, you don't just gain influence, you have to earn influence. And now we've been talking about what leaders owe to their people because of the position that they're in. They don't Good intentions are good, but you got to put some skill with those good intentions to lead well. And then it's really important that I lead myself first. If I'm a leader, I'm the first person I have to lead before I turn that outward and start looking at others. And today we're going to take the next two steps on that. Hey, welcome to the M Squared Leadership Conversation, a space where we talk honestly about the real challenges leaders face and what it actually takes to lead well in the real world. I'm Michael, that's Michelle. We're M Squared Leadership Consulting. Thank you for joining us. We're so glad you're here. So, Michelle, as we said in the intro, we're going to take the next 2 points in this section of what we believe leaders owe their people. And the first thing we're going to talk about is this idea of, it kind of goes along with the self leadership concept, and it really goes more to the impact that leaders
Mm-hmm.
have in that process.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the point: leaders set the tone, whether they mean to or whether they don't. So, with this, everything in any situation where there's a leader involved, that leader's influence on all the things that go into that situation is magnified above everybody else's. Now, we may not necessarily like this. If you're the leader, you may not want that pressure. If you're not the leader, you may wish you had a larger influence on things. But the fact is that leaders just have an outsized effect and influence. The way they bear on a situation is just greater than anyone else's.
Yeah, I mean, and just breaking it down a little bit more for us simpler folks, it's inherent when the responsibility is inherent when you are the leader. That's the reason the position came to you, or you were promoted to the, position. This position requires you to carry a burden.
Yeah, it's a
It
necessary part of the
it
leadership
is.
package.
You have and you are going to carry weight simply by the position that you are in. Hopefully, you're going to carry that weight because you feel the responsibility to the people that you're serving. And
Mhm.
that's where we usually try to arrive at.
Yeah. And as I was thinking about this and what we might want to say about it, I thought back to, I'm going to give a shout out here to my friend and acquaintance, Christi Dickey. You can find her on LinkedIn, is where she posts most of her good content. And I read something from her recently that was really good. And the idea, I don't know if she put it exactly like this, but the idea I took away from it is culture is built on Wednesdays.
Mm,
And the thing about it is why it was really meaningful to me is I've got this engagement coming up where I'm really excited. I'm going to get to go and do a half day leadership training event with a team of people. And I'm really excited about what I'm going to share with them. And I'm looking forward to, having some aha moments together and all that kind of thing. But what resonated with what Christy had written about this with me in light of what I've got coming up is that's all well and good. And I hope we have a meaningful, memorable time together, and I trust that we will. I'm sure we will. But that's not going to make or break that team's culture. It's not going to be transformed or, you know, not that it needs to be transformed, but it's not going to be, you're not going to experience a big cultural phenomenon with just one event. Culture is not made in some big aha moment. Culture is built on what happens on regular days, every day of the week, when you're just doing the thing and there's nothing really big going on. There's no, there's no angels singing, or it's just regular, run of the mill, everyday moments. That's where culture is built.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think of that saying, culture eats vision for
Yeah,
breakfast.
yeah. So, what if I'm the leader? What I actually do says far more than the words that come out of my mouth. And
Yeah.
anybody can talk a good game when, okay, we've set aside this dedicated time. We're going to have team happy time or team development or whatever for this 2 hours or however long we've set that aside. It's easy to get in that mode, that, good leader mode for that period of time. But then, as I said, once that's over and you're back to real life, as it were, what happens then? And it's easy to talk a good game, but then when you get back on the front line and things start going wrong, and this wasn't in the script, I've got an irate customer, or we're overwhelmed, or the pressure and the stress starts ratcheting up, then what? And that's where culture really gets formed or reinforced, I think.
So I can appreciate that part of the leadership skills is making sure that your staff has training and that you have
Oh,
team building
absolutely.
times. Those are wonderful. But how do you react to those same team members when they come to you and they need to challenge an idea or a process? What happens? How do you treat them? Is your door open? Is your door always closed? Do you have a smile for them? Are you ready to talk about their deficiencies? Are you ready to celebrate their wins? That's the culture of a real leader. Is that's where real leadership, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where real leadership happens. The encouragement when things are going well, and the encouragement when things are going not so great, but encouragement with how we can improve, the having the hard conversations. That's real leadership. I appreciate, um, and we do so much of it. The leadership training, the soft skills training, helping people to become aware of themselves and others. But none of it really matters if you don't have leadership that helps people apply the skills. And that's where culture is born and created. I recently was listening to Simon Sinek, and he went to this factory. I can't even remember what company it was, but they just had low turnover rate. And this is about 3,000 employees. And I can't even remember what they were making, but um, he wanted to, since it was such a happy rated company, he's always interested in what are y'all doing well, that people love it here and the
Mm-hmm.
culture is so great. And he, went in, talked to the CEO, and he's like, hey, I'm not even going to go with you. Go out on the floor, walk around, talk to people. And it was so obvious that they had such a good culture that there was not tons of safety signs on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't even have, like the red alert, signs or anything. And this was somewhere where manufacturing was going on. And he asked somebody about it, and he said, we care so much about each other that we are not going to let something else, something happen to someone else. And we know we keep each other updated on, it, like they talked about their communication, that line is down for this reason. They make sure and let everybody know. It's just this rich culture of including everyone and wanting to take care of everyone and everybody taking extreme ownership.
Yeah.
And that's how you build culture. And that had to start with the leadership caring enough about his people that he was able to push it all the way down. Now, the funny thing about that interview with Simon Sinek was when he got to go talk to a room full of the people, they were like, "Yeah, we doing great, right? Right." And he's like, "You are the most selfish company I've ever seen. Why are you not sharing this with everybody else?"
Get him, Simon.
But to me, that goes to the influence that leadership has on the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And until you've pushed that all the way down to your people to where they're caring about each other, they're mentoring each other, and you've built that genuine culture of just communicating well and loving each other and taking care of each other and having this second family kind of thing at work where you're taking care of each other. That's the ideal that we want to get to, that we have that kind of culture.
Yeah. It. We do mastermind groups as part of our suite of services that we offer at M Squared, and whenever we do, I think we've mentioned this before on the podcast that we talk about a particular law of John Maxwell, one of his books, and the more we talk about it, the more we realize this is really connected to that other law that we
Mm-hmm.
discussed last week, or even in a different book. And all of this leadership stuff is so intertwined. You've got me now thinking about other things tied to this topic that we're talking about. And it's, leadership is influence, and leaders lead themselves first. And so that leader that wants to build that culture has to be always concerned with how am I doing right now? And it's not, it can't be from a selfish
Mm-mm.
standpoint of I want everybody to think I'm good and come and pat me on the back and sing my praises, but it's how am I influencing this culture that I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
build? And so I have to start with me and
Mm-hmm.
monitoring my own behaviors. Another thing that you made me think about a little earlier in what you were saying is, and going back to the way this principle that we're talking about is worded, leaders set the tone, comma, whether they mean to or not. That part of it is so important
Well,
because if you're trying to convey a certain thing, of course, then your mind is gonna be on it. You're gonna be intentional. I am setting the tone right now. You're gonna have
mm-hmm.
that kind of attitude, and of course, you're probably gonna do. I mean, if you're competent enough to have ascended to some sort of leadership position, probably when you set out to do something, you're gonna tend to get it done because that's
Mm-hmm.
what leaders do.
Mm-hmm.
But what we've got to keep in mind is that whether they mean to or not part. And that got me thinking about and I want to say it like this, those crucible moments when things are not going well, when I'm not even thinking about, I must set an example right now for my people to follow. I've got to be the put together, my
Mm-hmm.
ties cinched up all the way to the top leader that everybody is looking at. That's fine, and you should do it then. But in those moments when everybody's hair is on fire and
Mm-hmm.
everything that can go wrong is going wrong, how do you behave then? And are you setting the right kind of tone that you want to permeate your organization then in those crucible moments?
Mm-hmm.
That's when I think the real test comes.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think of a family member, um, that whenever anything goes wrong, it's like, all alarm bells off. It's kind of, oh, and that strangely makes me calm. Like it puts the opposite effect on
Uh-huh.
me. That no, we're going to handle this in a reasonable way. We're not, running around, you know, setting our own self on fire
Mm-hmm.
because of this situation. And I think that's the mindset that we have to take on as leaders, because you are speaking volumes. It's like you're speaking into a megaphone.
All the time.
But even especially when there's the pressure.
Yes.
Just think about all the changes that we've gone through in our organization, the one you've retired from now. Um, there seemed to have always been some kind of emergency issue that needed to be addressed. Nothing life threatening, I can promise you. But because some congressman wanted an answer on something, or we had to, answer to whatever,
Mm-hmm.
then, everything had to be dropped until this set of data was found and could be proven and, verified and whatever. And the people that came to us, you, with frantic, a lot of times they would be the ones that would abuse you verbally in that situation, or undermine your competency, question how you do your job. But then we had other leaders that in those same situations where that data, had to get out before close of business today, or had to be responded to by 12 o'clock today, they would just be like, just as soon as we can, let's get this, do you have somebody you can reach out to? And then just start calmly working it. That set the
It
tone.
makes a difference.
And more mistakes are likely to happen when you operate in frantic
Of
mode,
course.
when you put pressure, when the leader is not calm, nobody in the house is calm. It's like when mama's not happy, nobody's happy. And just like, you usually have that one person in the house that can upset the whole calm of the house, whether it's a teenage daughter or the mom or whoever it is. The leader carries that same kind of weight.
Mm-hmm.
You can bring peace and calm, even with a sense of urgency, or you can bring chaos
You can
to.
multiply the chaos.
And in leadership, what you're doing is magnified.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is magnified when you, as the leader, are doing these things. So, reacting calmly and rationally and having a plan, that's magnified and that's modeled for your people.
Yeah, and it's gonna set the tone. That's what we keep talking about. It's gonna create and perpetuate a culture of calm in the
Mm-hmm.
chaos. I want to flag something that you were just talking about, this example from my former work life of how the leader may be getting pressure from higher up, and then how they translate that down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You didn't know some notes that I had written about the next point that we're going to talk about, but that's going to come back into play. And
Okay.
I love how you accidentally set me up for that. That's wonderful. I like that. Well, before we get off of this, I want to go back to what I started talking about with what Christi Dickey had shared about how culture is made. There's a lot of it that is not so much what gets rewarded, or what you try to reinforce. A lot of it is what gets tolerated. And I think
Absolutely.
sometimes that carries even more weight than what
Mm.
you intentionally try to encourage and reward. It's what people see. People are smart,
Yes.
and they're especially smart at figuring out when it's safe to stick their neck out and when it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's okay that maybe I hate to say it like this, but get away with something, and when I can't.
Mm-hmm.
And so as leaders, we have to be particularly, I think, tuned in on making sure that things that should not be tolerated don't get tolerated. Whether it's me doing the tolerating, or whether it's just happening out among the people that I'm supposed to be leading, I have to be tuned into that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just be, oh, la di da di da, oblivious and going about my day while there's dangerous things happening in the culture that I'm not necessarily even doing. But I have to have my finger on the pulse all the time of what's happening, what's being rewarded, what's being tolerated, what's being punished out among the rank and file.
So we're going to have to do a whole podcast on this particular issue, I think, at some point. Um, it was a few weeks ago, I ran across several articles around this topic, and once you get started, then you can find more and more and more.
Oh,
It
yeah.
opens your brain up. But it's the idea of how the worst employee is the most protected. And I think that speaks a little bit to this
It absolutely does.
of what's tolerated.
Yeah.
And there is I don't know of a greater way to tear down morale of your good, hard, smart, conscientious workers than allowing a toxic person in
Mm-hmm.
your office to go unchecked.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, it's because we don't want to have the difficult conversations. We don't want to have to say, that's not our culture.
Mm-hmm.
I will not tolerate that. You need to be in alignment with what the culture is that we're building. It's hard to have that conversation.
It is.
And so most people avoid it. I would say, especially in volunteer and government agencies,
Mm-hmm.
I think the corporate world does a better job a lot of times in these situations when you have good leadership. But in government, there's so much threat of I'll sue you,
Yeah.
I'll file a grievance, and it's just not worth going through it. So you just let them
Yeah.
sit over there instead of.
Government is notorious for being overprotective of bad employees.
And then our volunteer organizations, we're so scared to lose those scarce hands that we have
Yep.
that we'll tolerate. But when we tolerate that, we're actually, closing the door on other people that we might could get into our organization. And you get a reputation for having a bad team, even in a volunteer situation,
Yeah.
even in church or whatever. If you've got a toxic leader in there or somebody who's creates a bad culture, it's not upholding the culture of the church, nobody's going to want to volunteer there.
Yeah. I think this is a good segue point actually into our next, and we'll make this our final because we're so short on time already. Funny how that happens. But our next point here in this section about, what leaders owe their people, and this is the best leaders serve before they ask to be served. And everything you've been talking about is service. And I don't know of a better way to put it, because these are not easy things to do. If they were, we wouldn't be talking about them. But it's
And we'd all get it
difficult,
right and everything would be wonderful.
and they would all live happily ever after the end. But leadership is hard, and it's hard to find the courage and the guts and the wherewithal to take a stand and do the kind of things that you're talking about. And it is a true act of service in many, many cases to fulfill the function of a leader and to do it well. We talked about this. It's leadership is not a reward. Don't make the mistake of entering a leadership position and thinking, I have arrived. Everything's going to be sunshine and roses from here on. No, you've just now entered a position to where your ability and opportunity and obligation to serve has just ratcheted way up, because now you're in the main servant seat. And I love how a former pastor of ours put it. How do you know whether you have the heart of a servant? When somebody treats you like one. this is what we're talking about. A leader's role is to serve,
Mm-hmm.
and serving is not easy.
No.
So I think some of the ways that this comes into play is we can take a mistaken and erroneous view that service and servanthood is something that's soft. I think it's anything but soft, because we've just been talking about how difficult it can be to submerge your own self. What I would really prefer to do is just look the other way and not deal with this. I don't have time. I've got a lot of other things that I need to be doing. I don't want to deal with this toxic employee or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, ugliness is going on in my culture. But the
Mm-hmm.
heart of a servant compels a responsible leader to know I can't turn a blind eye.
Mm-hmm.
I have to jump in. I have to address this.
Yeah, it's that pull, because when you're in leadership, you have what people look at as perks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, okay, you get to come in at 9 o'clock when I have to be here at 7.
Mm-hmm.
You may not see, well, I have to stay till 6 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
or I have to stay even later, or I'm working on weekends because of this. But it's the things that look like perks, and sometimes maybe there are.
Mm-hmm.
You get to talk to the people at corporate, or you get to go to a special luncheon every now and then, or there's
Sure.
the different things that looks like perks. And sometimes you can feel, okay, I'm important.
Mm-hmm.
And it is an important role,
Sure.
but you can start feeling that. So with leadership comes this sense of ego, sense of, hey, I'm leading, I'm on my way, kind of thing. Um, and maybe you do. Maybe you make more money. Maybe you've got things a little bit better. You've ascended a little bit. And then there's where you should have a heart of serving. And there's the pull of these two things. And I think it was so beautifully said. Recently, we were listening to a podcast on Craig Groeschel, and he had John Maxwell on there. And John's 79,
I think
70,
so. I
something
think
like
that's right.
that. And he was talking about how he misses talking to people. When he started off small and he'd have his little conferences, first conference, there was 17 people there. And after the conference, they just all sat around and talked, and he
Yeah.
learned something from everybody. And then the next conference he had or whatever, somebody brought a book and wanted him to sign it. And before long, it was like couldn't talk to people because people were lining up to sign
It's
books.
just a
And he
pull on
didn't
this
want to,
time.
he didn't want to, disappoint anybody. So he signed all the books, and it was just this. And gradually over the years, he had to kind of be protected from the crowds of people, the people that he loved, the people that he writes the books for,
Mm-hmm.
the people that he wants to talk to because he loves their perspective and he knows he has something to learn from them. And I think when we get here, we forget that we're serving these people instead of managing them and
Instead of
trying
ruling
to.
over them. Yeah.
And it's that pull, but that's the reason developing yourself and developing as a leader is so important, is because you've got to be reminded that there's this pull. There's constantly going to be this pull on you
You'll
to,
get caught up in the trappings of the role.
you will, and pleasing your shareholders or whoever you
Uh-huh.
have to report to. You've got that responsibility and you feel that pressure. But no bottom line is ever going to mean anything or be met or whatever if you are trampling over the people, ignoring the people. You've got to lead them well.
I had written down this note. I'm just going to read it verbatim because you teed it up. It might seem counterintuitive, but where service applies most is to your team members, not the customer, not the board, not your boss, not whoever higher ups, the shareholders, it's your people.
Mm-hmm.
That's who you're here to serve. And we sometimes, I think, get it twisted a little bit and think, well, I'm the leader, I'm responsible, I have to take care of all these different things. And that's true to a degree. But what we miss is if we serve our people, if we serve our team well, most all that other stuff will work itself out.
It
Because
always
you
comes
take
back
care
to
of
the
your people,
people.
they'll take care of you.
Absolutely.
I think about what Stephen Covey wrote years ago, think win-win.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you need to do as a leader. That's this serve idea of I want to win. Of course I do. We all want to win
Mm-hmm.
individually. But there's the abundance mindset teaches us that there's enough wins to go around that you can have one too at the same time that
Mm-hmm.
I'm having one.
Mm-hmm.
And looking for ways to accomplish that. When you win, I win.
Mm-hmm.
We both win.
Mm-hmm.
I win as the leader. My team wins as individuals and collectively because they're a great team and
Mm-hmm.
because they're individually succeeding and excelling and, you know, setting themselves up for advancement and all the things. Um, and I think, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, as we're sitting here theoretically unpacking this stuff, it's easy to
Mm-hmm.
think that way. But when you get in those crucible moments, it gets harder. And win win is more than just, okay, I've got to avoid I win and you lose.
Mm-hmm.
I need to keep away from that. But we can also be tempted as leaders in the moment to think, I need to win. And I don't really, I hadn't got time to care about what happens to you. Ideally, I'd like for you to win, but I don't really care. I need to win right now.
Mm-hmm.
We got to avoid that too.
Mm-hmm.
And there never comes a point as a leader when we can just be indifferent to what is happening with our people. That's always got to be front of mind.
Amen.
Another aspect of this think win win idea, I think, is sometimes as the leader, and we don't like to talk about this, but it's tied up in this servanthood idea. Sometimes, in order for you, my team, to win, I've got to take a loss. I got to take an L. And I think about it if a project fails, my extreme ownership mindset as the leader is I take the hit for this. Maybe I can point the finger at old Fred on the team. He dropped the ball, and that's the reason we're in this pickle. But no, I'll take the heat. I've got to I've got to think win-win. I got to get Fred a win, even if he lost.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got to take the heat on this one, which brings me back to what you were saying earlier about, um, in my former job, sometimes there would be those moments when the leaders that I served under prioritized what their leader wanted in the moment, as unreasonable as it might have been, and prioritize that over the health of the team culture and what was good for the people.
No
It,
doubt.
it happens.
And I remember John talking about in one of the many times I've heard him, but he always comes back to this, that if something is successful, then you make sure and give the team credit.
Mm-hmm.
And if something fails, you make sure you take the blame
Mm-hmm.
as the leader.
And what better definition of being a servant could there be than that? If it goes well, you share the victory. If it goes badly, you accept the defeat.
But that goes against just our carnal humanity.
It does.
If we were successful, well, then my leadership led
Mm-hmm.
them to success.
Mm-hmm.
And if we failed, I should sure find somebody to blame that on. I can sure find Fred in the crowd who dropped the ball. And that's because we don't want to lose. We don't want to say we didn't do something well. And I remember, and this was years ago, Michael, when you did this. You started using the phrase when something wasn't going right with your team. You started using the phrase, I haven't led them to do XYZ when something was going wrong. And I would get so frustrated at you, not out loud, but to myself, because I knew very well he was giving people the benefit of the doubt, the kind of good man that he was, and the way he loved to lead people. But he always took the blame. I haven't found the right thing that will lead them to this right behavior. And that's really where we have to be. We have to think of it in that way. What can I do? What can I adjust that's going to lead them to, better outcomes?
I want to say that that was not an original idea. I got that directly from the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. Um, and this is just an example of I internalized it, I
Right.
learned it, I believe it, I put it into practice, and you saw the result. You saw the outflow of that. And one more point, and we'll bring this thing to an end. But I love what you said, and it made me think, you know, the fact of the matter is that my leadership did help in this. If we had a win as a team, then of course the leader had something to do with it. It's not just, if you did nothing and were useless, what do we even need you? Of course you had something to do with it. And if a project failed, chances are, was it just the leader that failed, or did we all share in the failure? It probably was the latter. But in this case, the truth, even though the truth may be that we just said, for the betterment of the team, for the greater good of the culture and the organization and my people, I'm going to choose not to highlight those truths. I'm just going to let them exist, and I know and you know in our heart of hearts what the truth is. But for the greater good, I'm going to stand up and take the heat like it was all me and I'm the one. And it's subjugating our own ego. It's subjugating our own selves for a greater purpose, for a higher purpose, for the benefit of our team and our people.
And you are, again, setting the culture, because chances are you've got a team leader, you've got, other other leaders that are leading smaller teams. You're setting an example for them to take extreme ownership of their people and their successes and their failures. And it's so important that what we do and how we act, again, I'm saying it's like a megaphone. The way we respond, our body language, everything in every situation, it's being magnified because of the position that we hold, because of we have leader written on our back.
Yeah, and I think that idea of servanthood can probably be summed up like this: it's somebody who willingly gives up their rights. Like if the truth would serve to make me look better, if I would just speak it, I give up the right to that for the greater good of my team.
And of course, we get servant leadership from the Bible. Jesus said he didn't come to be served, but to serve. And I mean, that's a beautiful example of what it really means. We're going to give up a few comforts and our own rights for the good of the team.
Absolutely. So all of this has been about what leaders owe their people. They owe their people to develop the skill to lead well, to lead them well. They owe it to lead themselves first before they try to lead others. They owe it to their people to set a good tone and to be conscious of that all the time. And they owe it to their people to serve before they ask to be served.
Yes.
I want to thank all of you for taking a few minutes with us here in the M Squared Leadership Conversation. Remember, leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to ask better questions. So until next time, stay curious, lead well, and keep the conversation going.